Welcome, friends, in this third lecture in the series about conscience. And I'm very glad that you follow this lecture, because we all know that the world today needs our influence and our support to harmonize the inner levels of this planet. And I can tell you a secret. When we decided the titles of the lectures this year, so half a year ago, we could not foresee how needed this subject is exactly in this week. So I do hope that you listen to all the wisdom of theosophy with the suffering in mind of the many people in Europe. We have contact with our friends in the Ukraine, and it is not an easy time for them, far from that. So what to do and what not to do? Do we take sides, or do we try to go inward and ask our conscience what is the best way to work? And I do hope that the ideas, the thoughts of tonight will help you finding a way to do more than only give money for refugees. I really hope that. So let us start with the lecture. The killing of enemies in all the initiation tales. We chose 2 lectures about killing because when you go inward and you ask your conscience, shall I kill or shall I not kill? That is a question on which your conscience speaks loudest of all the questions you will ask your conscience. The answer is always no. Never kill another human being is the answer of your conscience. And yet, if you look in the world and in history, you see people, especially as a group, as a nation, as a religion, who kill others and even are proud because they do it in the name of their religion, in the name of their country, and so on. How is such a disharmony possible? How is it possible? And that is what we want to exchange the ideas about that with you, because then you can build up wisdom, and not only a way to go and a way to act, but build up the wisdom by which you can choose the wisest way in the place in society where you are. Religious fanatism is always there when the idealism of people is manipulated, is paralyzed, is turned into another direction. When there is an economic war, people are never so fanatic. It is always in religious turmoil and religious struggles. Therefore, it is good for you to realize what a religion is. And a religion, any religion on this planet, is an expression of an inner school of wisdom. It is a degenerate, often degenerate expression, but it is the exoteric expression of an inner mystery school. Then the question is, are there many mystery schools in the planet? No, there is only one mystery school. And to explain that to you, I have that simple diagram we used before, only not in this series of lectures. What you see is a graphic expression of the life of our planet Earth. And instead of planet Earth, I could have said you as a human being, or the plant, or an animal. Every living being is described in this form, the life of every being. What I try to express for you is that every life of every being consists of 7 great periods. And you know those periods in human life. We have a child stage, we have a school child stage, we have a teenager stage, we have an adult, a beginning adult stage where you build up your career. Then you have a stage where your career is settled, and you look around you and say, what am I doing? I have no time for wisdom anymore. And then you step back a little from the rat race to have 3 cars and 2 houses and so on. And the 7th stage in your life is the most important, although people don't realize that. That is the wisdom stage, and people call it old age. And it is not old age, it is wise age. And keep that in mind, that the living planet Earth has also those periods. And where are we now? Where is the planet in its incarnation? The planet is halfway. The planet is halfway its life, and you know that when you were halfway in your life, and perhaps you are young and you are not yet there, but 20, 30 years old, then things are changing from teenage existence, because you start to make totally your own decisions. You start to use your own conscience without leaning on your parents or your friends or whatever. And for the Earth, it is also the case. You see in the diagram the 4, and that is a point where the line goes up again. From that moment on, you start learning spiritual lessons, and you spiritualize again till you are in your old and in fact wise age, and you draw conclusions of everything you have learned in your life. So the Earth is on a turning point, going from downwards in material situations, and going upwards again to spiritualize. And in that 4th period, you have 7 sub-periods. And those sub-periods are called by theosophists 150 years ago a root race. And it is in fact a difficult and a little bit silly name, because when people think of a race, they think of color of skin and form of eyes, and that is so not meant by those 7 sub-phases. What we say, I show it already to you. Yes, the school of life has 7 stages, 7 phases, and every school has 7 classes. So the 4th school in the life of the planet has 7 classes of the human kingdom. In fact, during that middle stage of the earth, we once were in our 1st class and were very sleepy and primitive and so on. And then the 2nd class, we were awakening a little bit more, but we're not so independent. Yes, look at the little children in the play school. And then the 3rd class in that 4th school is the time when we started to think. We were starters in the thinking school. And we were helped with that by those human beings who were already further developed, further evolved, and also by those members of one kingdom higher, those members who already had developed thinking so well that they started to go to a higher kingdom. And you can call it Buddhic, divine, or whatever. They are so much further that they are already perfected human beings. And it's good for you, when you have never heard of this, to think about it. Is it possible that there are living beings further evolved than we humans? Look around you, see if that is true. That is one of the questions of our course Thinking Differently and Life Wisdom, both courses. Look around you and see if it is true. Are there human beings further evolved than the average ones? Those human beings helped the other human beings to awaken their faculty of thinking. And what is the characteristic of thinking? That means that you are able to look at yourself and decide whether your choices in life are right or wrong. And this happened in the 3rd class of the 4th school. Halfway that 3rd class, it started our thinking, and that is 18 million years ago, according to old Hindu timetables. And at that moment, you as a human incarnating being started to learn lessons, what is right and what is wrong. And all those lessons started to build up, and after many incarnations, you call it your conscience. So you can imagine that during that 3rd class, your conscience was not yet so ripe as it is now. So in the 3rd class, you still leaned on your thinking parents, those Buddhas and other beings who are in the next kingdom. And then in the 4th school, we went into the 4th class. And Helena Blavatsky called it the Atlantean period. You can forget that name, it doesn't matter. But in that class, we already developed some conscience, but our insight in what is right or wrong was so young and fluid that at that time, when those teachers of humanity gave wisdom, people often were not able and not strong enough to use that wisdom only for the good of everyone. And they used it for their own personal good, that they developed power over others, that they started to get what they wanted at the cost of others. And at that time, those teachers of humanity started mystery schools. There is one mystery school, and you can call that the heart of the planet, not the pumping heart as we have, but the inner heart. And from that inner heart, you can call it a tree, there went many branches in many ages of the life of the planet. So what are religions? Religions are the outer forms of all those branches of that one mystery school. If people say, I'm a Buddhist, and others say, I'm a Hindu, they still have to realize that Buddhism is nothing else than a purification, a later addition, a purification of Hinduism. And Hinduism is a branch of that heart of the planet. In fact, it is one branch. And so you see that, in fact, all religions are, in fact, one religion in different facets. Okay, if you understand that, then it is good to understand that in the fourth class, people were not so wise yet. They still had to learn to become wise, to use their conscience, to let their conscience grow every incarnation again. And what happened was that you can describe us, the people in that fourth class, for we were that. Yes, we have grown from 3 to 4 to 5 and so on. And in the fourth class, what was the characteristic of the average human being? We can describe it as shrewd, as cunning, as slim. Slim, Bouke? Doesn't matter. I hope you understand what I mean. Not wise, but able to get what they want, using their mind plus egoism. That is perhaps the right word. It is difficult to find the right word for this process. In the third class, we were starting thinkers, leaning good on the shoulders of our teachers. In the fourth class, we were cunning. We use our wisdom for our own benefit, and only our benefit and not your benefit. And now we are in a fifth class. And in the fifth class, we have become, incarnation after incarnation after incarnation, wiser and wiser and wiser. And that is something you have to realize, because the cunning human being, when the mystery schools formed their school material, their textbooks, you can say, in the form of initiation tales, in stories where have been explained how we as a human being will grow to wisdom, to enlightenment, to liberation and so on. And those stories were always in a form that those cunning people, those shrewd people in the fourth situation could understand. And what did they understand? How to fight. They were solving every problem by war. And if you read the Mahabharata, yes, such a row of books of the history of India, you see that every page is a war. If you read the Ilias of Homer, every page, all the expressions is war. And that is what you find in that fourth school, that fourth class. We are now in the fifth class. And we have learned already that it is not so wise to start wars. And I want to say that on double volume, please. So it is not wise to start wars, because wars will never solve a problem. Wars is an explosion of hatred, and after that explosion, nothing is done to make the situation better. Therefore, when we in the fifth class, where we are now, if we have a conflict, we wisely solve that conflict by talking with each other, by exchanging ideas, by understanding why the other person is angry or sad or afraid or whatever. And we express why we are angry, sad or afraid or whatever. And then you can find each other. I could call it diplomacy, were it not that the term diplomacy is degenerated in lying for your profession. Most diplomats, most political people on television never give an answer. They talk around an answer. They never say straight on yes or no. And that is the degeneration of our fifth class way of solving problems. So it is waiting for those honest people who really don't lie to each other when they try to solve something. But it is the fifth class solving of problems. And in that class, the chelas, the pupils, those who want to grow on the spiritual path to help others, they learn their lessons in initiation tales, not fighting or killing or conquering the enemy, but by mastering something within themselves that is on a lower level, by mastering their instincts, by mastering their fears, by mastering their impulse to hurt others. And that mastering is typically the class of today. And in the future, we will go together to the sixth class. And that class is very special. That class, in that class, we will learn and we will be capable to even prevent conflicts before they are born, because we protect the atmosphere with such a wisdom and such a quiet, calm attitude that any start of a conflict is not growing into a larger one. So, fourth class, fighting the enemy. Fifth class, talking to each other to solve a problem. And the sixth class, being so strong morally that conflicts don't have a chance to expand. I think this is a good first start of this evening to understand why we are giving this lecture. And it is good to have 3 minutes to think about it and to form your questions. And after 3 minutes, I hear from Bouke which questions you have. Thank you. Bouke, are there questions?
Yes, we have one question. When people now have the desire to talk out a conflict, the other party is also required to wanting to talk it out. As now in the present conflict this does not seem possible, is it then a matter of patience?
Okay, I hope you have heard the question. Yes, Bouke, you were... it can be heard what you asked me? Okay,
Yeah.
You have heard the question. When there is a conflict, then you are able to center within yourself in that part who is not aggressive, who is not insulted, who is not angry. If you are higher in yourself than those impulses, then the other party often leaves behind his instinctive impulses of aggression as well. So, most of the time, in a conflict where one of the parties is wise and strong enough not to take sides, not to justify himself and attack and criticize others, but just let us find a solution. And at that moment, the other party cools down and starts to talk with you. And to talk with each other does not mean that you tackle someone with words. For that is also possible, to fight with words. No, really finding a solution. And it is always the case that when one of two parties decides to do that, the other will follow. Aggression sparks aggression. And inner wisdom and harmony does the same in other people. And this is not theory. This is simply practice, really. Try it. Are there more questions?
Not for now. Maybe next.
A little bit harder.
Not for now.
Not for now.
So, yeah.
Okay. Then I want to share with you.